Hello, everyone, and again, welcome to GERO 500, Foundations of Gerontology. In this course, we will explore the biological, psychological, sociocultural, and policy-related factors that shape the aging process, and we will examine innovative solutions to support an increasingly diverse aging population. As you begin going through the content of this course, you may already have a general sense of what gerontology is, especially if your professional work involves healthcare, social services, policy, or community-based programs. But one of the goals of this first module is to help you see that gerontology is much broader, deeper, and more interdisciplinary than it's often assumed to be. Gerontology, by definition, goes well beyond just working with older adults, and it's certainly not restricted to healthcare spaces. It's a field and discipline that asks broad-ranging questions about how we age, how societies structure aging, and how systems either support or disadvantage people as they grow older. An important point I'd like to stress at this juncture. Throughout the course, we'll be thinking about aging not just as a biological process, but as a social, cultural, economic, and political experience. We'll review and discuss how aging is a process that affects individuals, families, communities, and entire systems. In this first part of Module 1, we'll focus specifically on the field of gerontology, what it is, why it matters across professions, how scholars think about aging, and why combating aging stereotypes and ageism is central to gerontological work. But before we really dive into the content of this first module, I do want to take a brief moment and make a statement on language used in this course. As you progress through the module lectures, you'll notice that I never use the term elderly. When describing older age groups, I will almost always use the phrase older adults or elders. I try to avoid using terms like elderly and senior citizens. Why? Well, historically, these terms were often used in a derogatory way, particularly towards older adults who are more frail, dependent, or ill. As such, their use carry a negative connotation, one that can reinforce harmful aging stereotypes, which we'll cover quite a bit throughout this course. Also, research shows that older adults find these terms patronizing and offensive. Because of this, nearly every major gerontological professional organization recommends its members avoid using elderly or seniors to describe older adults. I thus ask you to also consider your own language and how minor adjustments can make you seem more professional while also helping you build trust with your older clients. With that out of the way, let's address the question, what is gerontology? Well, to give a basic definition, gerontology is the scientific and interdisciplinary study of aging and the aging process across the life course. It examines how people change as they age, how societies respond to aging populations, and how systems shape the experiences and outcomes of older adults. What makes gerontology unique is its interdisciplinary nature. Gerontologists draw knowledge and skills from a variety of disciplines to better address questions surrounding age and aging. Gerontologists draw from biology to understand the physical changes, from psychology to explore cognition and emotional well-being, from sociology to examine social roles and relationships, and from economics, policy, and public health to analyze systems that affect older adults' lives. Importantly, gerontology emphasizes that aging is heterogeneous. There is no single or typical aging experience. People age differently based on factors like gender, race, and ethnicity, socioeconomic status, disability, geography, culture, and historical context. Two people who are the same chronological age can have vastly different health, resources, and life circumstances, which inform their experience as they move into and through older adulthood. This focus on diversity and context is central to gerontology, and it's something that we'll return repeatedly to throughout the course. Now, Although humans have always reflected on aging philosophically and culturally, gerontology as a formal scientific field didn't really emerge until the early 20th century. The field began to take shape in the 1930s and 1940s alongside major demographic shifts and medical advances that increased life expectancy. As more people began to live longer, more professionals across a variety of fields took notice and shifted their studies and work towards addressing the needs of older adults. An early milestone was the establishment of the Gerontological Society of America, or GSA, in 1945, which helped formalize aging research as an interdisciplinary endeavor. From the beginning, gerontology, as defined by the GSA, was not confined to one discipline. It brought together biologists, psychologists, sociologists, economists, and public health scholars. In the mid-20th century, scholars began developing foundational theories that still influence the field today. Early sociological theories, such as disengagement theory, attempted to explain how aging affected social roles. In response, activity theory and later continuity theory offered alternative perspectives, emphasizing engagement and adaptation rather than withdrawal. If these all sound foreign to you, don't worry. We cover them in more depth in a future module. At the same time, psychological frameworks such as lifespan development theory and later socio-emotional selectivity theory expanded our understanding of aging as a dynamic developmental process rather than as a period of decline. Again, if this sounds foreign, we have you covered. We'll be discussing these in later modules too. In the late 20th century, Rowe and Kahn's concept of successful aging reframed aging research around function, engagement, and well-being. Although I'll note that this concept has since evolved and been critiqued, as we'll discuss in the next lecture and throughout this course. Over time, the field has increasingly incorporated life course perspectives, health equity frameworks, and structural analyses, recognizing that aging is shaped not only by biology, but by policy, inequality, and social context. Today, gerontology remains a deeply interdisciplinary field, one that continues to evolve as societies age and as our understanding of equity, diversity, and systems-level change expands. At this point, it's maybe important to clarify a common source of confusion: the difference between gerontology and geriatrics. Yes, these terms sound a whole lot alike, and you may have probably heard both terms, maybe used both terms, and possibly use them interchangeably. Yet, while the two fields overlap, they are not actually the same. Geriatrics is a medical specialty. It focuses on diagnosing, treating, and managing health conditions in older adult patients. Geriatricians are physicians, and their work is primarily clinical. In this way, a geriatrician typically has extensive training in biomedicine. Gerontology, on the other hand, is much broader and not limited to medicine. Gerontologists may be researchers, educators, program developers, policymakers, administrators, advocates, or practitioners working in healthcare, community organizations, government, or nonprofit settings. The field of gerontology includes geriatrics, but is not limited to geriatrics. Where geriatrics focuses on treating individual patients, gerontology can ask a diverse array of questions like, how are healthcare systems designed to meet the needs of aging populations? Or how do policies shape access to care, income security, or long-term services? Or how do social environments influence health and well-being in later life? For students in an MHA program like the one here at Cal State Channel Islands, this distinction is especially important. Even if you never work directly in clinical care, your decisions as administrators, managers, or policymakers will profoundly shape how older adults experience aging within healthcare and social systems. Gerontology provides a lens to understand those broader impacts. One of the reasons gerontology is such a vital field is that aging affects every sector of society. Population aging influences things like healthcare delivery and financing, workforce composition, housing and transportation systems, social services and community supports, family caregiving structures, and public policy at local, state, and federal levels. Gerontology equips professionals across disciplines to respond thoughtfully and effectively to these changes. For healthcare administrators in particular, understanding gerontology means being better prepared to manage increasingly complex patient populations, design age-friendly systems and services, allocate resources equitably, anticipate long-term demographic and workforce trends, and address disparities that disproportionately affect older adults. Gerontology, unlike some other academic disciplines, is also deeply applied. Yes, the field is rife with theory from biological, psychological, and social disciplines, but the work of a gerontologist doesn't stop at theory. The field is thus oriented towards using research and evidence to inform programs, policies, and practices that improve quality of life in later years. You'll see this applied focus reflected in your assignments each week and ultimately in your capstone project due by the end of this course. Now, to better understand how gerontologists think about aging, it's helpful to introduce a key concept, the gerontological imagination. The idea of the gerontological imagination was inspired by sociologist C. Wright Mills's concept of the sociological imagination, which emphasizes the connection between individual lives and broader social and historical forces. Gerontologist Kenneth Ferraro adapted this idea to aging, arguing that to truly understand aging, we must look beyond individual choices or behaviors and consider the larger context shaping people's lives over time. The gerontological imagination encourages us to see aging as a lifelong process, not something that begins at age 65. Shaped by social structures such as education, labor markets, healthcare systems, and public policy. Influenced by historical events and cohort experiences, and embedded in cultural norms and societal expectations. In other words, the gerontological imagination helps us understand how biography intersects with the history in later life. For example, differences in health outcomes among older adults are not simply the result of personal decisions made late in life. They often reflect cumulative advantages or disadvantages experienced across decades, shaped by access to education, employment opportunities, discrimination, neighborhood environments, and policy decisions. What we experience in early life helps to inform our experiences as older adults, both positively and negatively. Adopting a gerontological imagination allows professionals to move away from deficit-based or blaming perspectives and toward a more structural, equity-focused understanding of aging. Okay, we're now going to cover one final topic in this first lecture, but it's a big one. In fact, it's a foundational concept in gerontology, ageism. Ageism refers to stereotypes, prejudices, and discrimination directed towards individuals or groups based on age. It can be explicit or subtle, intentional or unintentional, and it operates at multiple levels. And it can happen to any age group, old or young. At the individual level, ageism may appear as assumptions that older adults are frail, cognitively impaired, resistant to change, or dependent. At the institutional level, ageism can be embedded in policies or practices. For example, when healthcare systems undertreat pain in older patients, or when workplaces sideline older employees or deny them access to continuing education in the workplace. At the structural level, ageism influences how resources are allocated and which populations are prioritized in policy decisions. It's also important to recognize that ageism is not always overtly negative. So-called benevolent ageism, such as assuming older adults need protection or shouldn't be involved in decision-making, can still undermine autonomy and dignity. Ageism has real consequences. Research shows that it can negatively impact physical health, mental health, access to care, and overall quality of life for older adults. It also reinforces inequities, particularly for older adults who already face marginalization based on race, gender, disability, or socioeconomic status. Combating ageism is therefore a central goal of gerontology. Gerontologists work to challenge ageist narratives through research, education, advocacy, and the design of programs and policies that respect older adults as diverse, capable individuals. You'll begin engaging directly with these ideas in this module's Padlet assignment, where you'll examine how aging and older adults are portrayed, positively or negatively, and how these portrayals shape attitudes and outcomes. As we wrap up this first lecture, I want to emphasize a few key takeaways. Gerontology is an interdisciplinary and applied field that helps us understand aging in all its complexity. The gerontological imagination encourages us to see aging as shaped by lifelong processes and broader social forces, rather than isolated individual factors. And addressing ageism is important for those working in healthcare spaces. It's central to promoting equity and well-being in later life. In the next part of Module 1, we'll shift our focus to key concepts that help explain population aging, including the demographic transition model and why demographic change has such profound implications for policy, healthcare, and society. As you move forward, I encourage you to reflect on this question. How might adopting a gerontological imagination change the way you approach your professional role or the systems you work within? This concludes the first lecture in Module 1. If you have any questions about the material covered in this lecture, please feel free to contact your instructor for this course. Thanks for watching.